So on my left, I've got the paper 2. On the right, I've got the mark scheme. Now, we use the same rules in our mark scheme. We don't mark negatively. We only mark for what you give. But obviously, if you give just about nothing, there's not much to mark. So do take, yeah? Oh, that's okay. Okay. So what we've got here is section A says shorter writing and reflective commentary. You recently started doing some voluntary work in your free time. Your head teacher has asked you to give a short speech to your school to encourage others to do something similar. Okay. So you need to write a speech. Okay. Who is the speech to? You need to know that, right? We need to look at, so it says write a text for your speech using no more than 400 words. So 400 words, if you know, you should know by now more or less how many words per line you do. I know I do an average of 9 to I do 9 to 11 words per line. So I just go with 10 lines and then I just count. So if I need to do 400 words, I'll do 40 lines. And on an exam pad, there are 33 lines. I usually leave the top line open, so there's 32 lines. So the first page, I do the whole page, but I'll write paragraphs, so 3 lines will be open. So that will be about 280 words on the first page, and then I have to do another 12 lines of writing on the next page. And that's kind of how I figure it out. I'm not sitting there constantly counting my words in my exam. Yeah. Maybe I have the wrong one. Let me just explain this one, and then like it doesn't really matter which question paper you have in front of you. I'm just trying to explain what to expect from a question paper. So it's not a big deal. Just follow along with me, and I'll upload this one for you guys just now. Okay. Cool. So what we've got is we've got to write this 400 word speech. Okay. And we need to focus on so it tells us what to focus on. The advantages of doing voluntary work, and it tells us to suggest ways in which students can volunteer. Okay. So we need to make sure that those two things are in our speech. But then we also need to understand what is the purpose of our speech. We want to encourage others. And to encourage others is a nice way of saying we want to persuade them. Okay. And so we're trying to persuade people to do what we are doing. So it's going to have persuasive elements. It's going to be making use of ethos, pathos, and logos. Then our second part of question 1 is for 10 marks, and we need to write a reflective commentary on our text, explaining how your linguistic choices contribute to fulfilling the task set by your head teacher. So we're looking at how our linguistic choices contribute to fulfilling the task set by our head teacher. So the head teacher told us to encourage. So what we're going to do is we're going to say, how did we use language to make sure we were encouraging others? How were we look at it was a short speech. Now, a short speech has a different format to a long speech, and here we're looking at form. Okay, in terms of how we structure it, we're going to structure it for our audience, for our purpose. And so these are things that we're going to analyze, and we're basically doing a text analysis, but we're adding a caveat of basically why we chose that thing, and we can speak in first person. I chose to do this because of this. It is not a review of your work. It's not saying, oh, I think I could have done this better. Yes, you could have probably done that better, then go fix what you did. Okay. Your goal here is to say, this is the decision I made. This is why I made the decision. Remember, if we bring it back to what I said about the purpose of the subject is to understand, why do we do English? Why does English work the way it works? Why do we use English in this way? And so they're testing, do you understand? You might have made decisions in your writing, but did you understand why you made those decisions? Because so often we write things and we say things and we're not aware of the impact of what we're doing and saying while we're doing it. And so they want to know, are you able to analyze why you did those things? Are you able to figure out your own decisions? Because now you have spent paper 1 telling me why other people make decisions in their writing, whether it's conscious or subconscious. Paper 2, you're saying why you make the decisions. And your whole paper is about you intentionally making decisions to use language to achieve the task. Now, section B is our extended writing. So every time this is going to be something different. You can generally expect that there might be either a descriptive or a narrative task. There's probably going to be some kind of review. Reviews are really big. And then you'll probably have some kind of article, or you might need to write a speech or some kind of essay, just some kind of transactional piece. But whichever one of those it is, you're going to be writing 600 to 900 words. And so you need to understand the differences between a descriptive essay and a narrative essay. A narrative essay has the purpose of a narrative essay is to tell a story. The purpose of a descriptive essay is to create a world, to get the reader into a world. Now, a descriptive essay can tell a story, but that is not the primary purpose. At the same time, a narrative essay can describe and should describe, both of them can and should, but that is not their primary purpose. Okay. So, in class, you've been discussing the idea that many teenagers find museums boring. You decide to write an article about this, which will be published on a museum website. In your writing, focus on what would make museums more appealing to teenagers and how museums can benefit from more teenage visitors. Write between 600 and 900 words. Okay. So here we're going to understand, okay, who is our audience? What is our purpose? What is our context? Okay. So you need to write an article. Okay, so that's your form. And this article is going to be published on a museum website. So it needs to be quite professional. It's not written just for teenagers. Okay, but it is still written for teenagers. So not just teenagers are going to read it, but teenagers will be reading it. And what we want to do is we want to explore this idea of what would make museums more appealing to teenagers. So what we want our audience to do. We always think, what do I want from my audience? Okay, I want my audience to say, I want my audience, maybe as if they're teenagers, I want them to be like, yeah, I mean, honestly, I would also go to a museum more if this was changed. But then I also want museums to learn from this and say, you know, I could really, I think we could really benefit from more teenage visitors. And so have them, we want to kind of persuade them to make the changes they need to make to get more teenage visitors. Okay, we need to write between 600 and 900 words. So if we look at the type of article, the type of article is going to have elements of persuasion, but it needs to be very engaging, because if you are writing an article about museums being uninteresting to teenagers, and you're going to make your article uninteresting and boring, you have not achieved the purpose. Does that make sense? So then write a story which begins with the following sentence. Clara carefully opened the envelope and saw that it contained one thing only, a single photograph of a group of people. And we need to create a sense of drama and mystery. So now we need to see, okay, in terms of form, how do we create drama and mystery? What do we know about those genres, and how can we apply that to our story? So make something up. I always tell my students to write fanfic. Okay? You don't have to use the same words, but use characters that you already know and love. Okay. Let's think who's a character I know and love. Oh my gosh. Okay, Percy Jackson. I'm actually currently watching Percy Jackson. So in Percy Jackson, we've got different characters, and so I can say, um, I want to create drama and mystery. So I can say, okay, Clara is going to be played by Annabeth, or Clara is going to be played by Percy, or whoever I want to have Clara be played by. And I look at how would Percy react in that situation, and I draw the story from there. That's personally how I do it, because I don't have time in my exam. You don't have time in your exam to create a whole new character, and you need a character who is not flat. But if you're going to do that, you need to be someone who really does explore characters. And I'm the type of person who figures out the Myers-Briggs and the astrology of each of the characters that I like. Um, I I like doing things like that. I think about, oh, how would they react in this situation? How would they react in this situation? And I mean, that might be something beneficial to you for practicing writing stories. Now, our third question is, you recently attended an international youth conference on how to make the world a better place. You decide to write a review of the conference, which you will post on your blog. Okay, now it's a youth conference. Again, who is our audience? Probably going to be a younger audience, but we might have some older people reading, but they're not our primary audience, because older audience don't generally read about youth conferences. Okay. Just give me a sec. Okay. Now let's quickly look at our mark scheme. You'll notice that the mark scheme is quite similar. If anyone is interested in learning about how to use Obsidian, which is what I use for my notes, oh, that looks interesting. I wrote it, but I forget what I write because I write a lot. So if anyone is interested in Obsidian and how to use it, tell me so that I can organize like an extra session at some point to teach you how to use Obsidian, because it is a great way to manage all of your writing, all of your resources. I literally have all of my things in Obsidian. And this is just my Obsidian for my student, for my teaching. I've got my own Obsidians for my own things. Now, we've got our same things that we spoke about previously, but our outcomes that we're looking at here is writing effectively, creatively, accurately, and appropriately for a range of audiences and purposes. And we're looking at analyzing the ways in which writers and speakers' choices of form, structure, and language produce meaning and style. Okay. So for question 1A, we're only being marked on AO2. Okay. So we're only being marked on our writing. And so we want to look at, we're looking at the level of accuracy. So when I say accuracy, are you using words correctly? Are you spelling words correctly? Let me actually just move my little picture to the other side so that you can see better. There we go. Is that better? Okay. So we want to write accurately, and then we need to make sure that the text is logically and effectively organized, and the ideas are developed throughout in a sophisticated manner. So we need to be intentional about how we structure our sentences, paragraphs, the whole piece. And we will be exploring how to organize your things better, but you need to kind of be using the Peel method. If you're going to say something, you make your point and then you elaborate on your point. Okay, so then text is achieved fully, content is fully relevant. So did you actually answer the question? And then is the audience fully engaged? Okay, so yeah, that is a duh. We need to make sure that our audience is engaged. We are speaking to an audience, so we need to interact with them. Okay. So our question 1B is only looking at AO3, and this is for 10 marks. So again, we're looking at the speaker's choices of form, structure, and language, and how they shape the meaning. So we're looking at an analysis of form, structure, and language. You see, even though the question does not mention structure, form, and language, this is what it's asking about. Okay, and we're looking at an analysis, keyword, of how the writer's stylistic choices relate to audience and shape meaning. Okay. And then for our extended writing, this is our table. We've got one table and we mark all of them with the same table. So we look at your expression, your range of language, whether you have complex structures. So complex structures, if you're just going to say the cat sat on the mat, the cat liked to wear a hat. That's going to be a very simple structure. But if we are going to look at complex structures, it might help you to get into the frame of mind for writing complex structures by reading texts by, who are the writers? What's his name? Charles Dickens writes very complicated, in very complicated, complex structures. And then we're looking for less common lexis. So don't use everyday language, just change up your language. Obviously, if you're going to use less common lexis, make sure you understand the word. Yeah. Then we've got a high level of accuracy, which I explained. So here, even here, your spelling is looked at. If you misspell something, it is looked at here. if you are phrasing something in a way that is weird, you lose marks for your accuracy. Because the point of language accuracy is to be able to communicate. And if you are throwing someone off by a weird language use, obviously they're not going to be able to be as engaged in your story. You want to draw them in and really engage with them. So text is logically and effectively organized. Again, task is achieved fully, content is fully relevant. And so it's, yeah, yes. Lexis is words. Okay. You'll notice I use the word Lexis, syntax, morphology. I've actually got a lesson somewhere on our course where I talk about the definition of all those things. The definitions of all those things. Okay. So we're looking at, is the audience fully engaged? Okay. So that is pretty simple in terms of what you're marked for. It's just a matter of practicing and managing your time because you might not be used to writing a 900-word essay. I would recommend that each of you, every morning when you wake up, you write 3 pages. Anything. Call it my morning pages, and I write every morning 3 pages. I just write. I use A5 pages. And I just write. And when I started, I was writing 3 pages was taking me like 45 minutes. Now 3 pages takes me 15 minutes. I didn't do it for the purpose of increasing my writing speed, but it helps. Because if you're like, oh my gosh, I've got so much to do, but I've got to do this, you're going to write a lot faster. Okay. Cool.